Before the first sunrise ever kissed the horizon, there was only the hum of potential, a silent, trembling vibration held within the throat of the infinite. Imagine standing at the precipice of absolute nothingness, where the very concept of up or down had yet to be invented. Was the universe a dream waiting to be dreamed, or a blueprint yearning for a builder?
Then, the command echoed.
It was not a sound of air striking a drum, but a rupture in the silence that splintered the void. In that heartbeat, the architecture of existence began its rapid, rhythmic ascent.
Light fractured away from the suffocating weight of the dark, chasing shadows into the corners of a nascent reality.
It was a masterwork of division and definition. The firmament stretched wide, carving a crystalline divide between the chaotic, swirling depths of the primordial waters and the vast, unreachable ceiling of the heavens. The chaos of tohu wabohu, the formlessness and emptiness, was not merely pushed aside, it was harnessed.
The land emerged from the retreating tides like an island rising from a long, dreamless sleep, draped in the verdant promise of flora and the steady rhythm of seasons that had no name.
Each separation was a stroke of precision, a deliberate act of order imposed upon the unruly canvas of the deep. As the celestial bodies ignited, casting their measured influence across the expanse, a hierarchy of being crystallized. The stars became the silent sentinels of the night, while the sun claimed the day as its own domain, establishing the fundamental pulse of the cosmos. This was not the random collision of stardust, but the calculated unfolding of a grand design. Every atom found its orbit, every element learned its weight. In this cosmic theater, the stage was meticulously prepared, the lighting dimmed and flared with geometric perfection, and the laws of physics were pinned into the bedrock of the universe.
Yet, as the final day of this grand construction neared, a singular, quiet question lingered in the stillness of the newly minted world. What purpose would these elaborate halls serve, and who was intended to inhabit the silence that had been so masterfully filled?
The architecture was complete, but the story had only just begun. The symphony of the cosmos had found its rhythm, but the stage remained vast and silent, awaiting a presence that could appreciate the nuance of its design. Amidst the lush, sprawling tapestry of the garden, a sanctuary where the fragrance of cedar clung to the air and the rivers hummed a perennial lullaby, the definitive act of creation unfolded. The ground, rich with the potential of 1,000 eons, yielded a form sculpted with intention. This was not a creature of mere instinct, driven by the tides of nature or the seasonal shift of the winds. As the breath of life stirred within, an unprecedented spark flickered into existence. The capacity for self-awareness, the ability to ponder the stars, and the burden of intellectual freedom. Here stood the steward of the garden, a being uniquely positioned between the dust of the earth and the breath of the infinite. This mandate of dominion was never intended to be a reign of tyranny, but a sacred trust. It was an invitation to serve as the gardener of reality, tasked with naming the creatures that roamed the golden fields and ensuring the delicate balance of the environment was preserved. In this sanctuary, knowledge and harmony were inextricably linked. Curiosity was not a vice, but the very instrument by which the steward explored the infinite creativity of the architect. Every leaf held a story. Every stream reflected a truth waiting to be understood. The garden acted as a closed-loop system of profound sustainability, where no desire went unmet and no discord disturbed the tranquil clarity of the mind. It was a state of existence where vulnerability was unknown and shame had no home. The steward moved through this domain not as an intruder, but as a reflection of the architect's own artistry. There was a profound intimacy in this relationship, a dialogue conducted in the cool of the evening when the sky turned the color of bruised plums and the world seemed to hold its breath in reverence. Yet, within this paradise, the very existence of a choice suggested a future of great complexity. To be a steward required a free will capable of either cherishing the garden or questioning its boundaries. As the sun set on that pristine epoch, the seeds of a profound destiny were already sown in the quiet, curious heart of the first observer. In the heart of the garden, where light danced through the emerald canopy in rhythmic patterns, a subtle shift occurred. A fracture in the crystalline perfection of the world. Perfection, it seems, is a delicate equilibrium, and freedom of choice requires a contrast to define its value. Thus, in the center of the sanctuary stood the tree of knowledge, a sentinel of silent potential, bearing fruit that promised a horizon beyond the familiar confines of paradise. Temptation arrived not with a roar, but with a whisper, a suggestion that the boundaries defining the garden were not for protection, but for restriction. The catalyst was a questioning of the architect's intent, an invitation to transcend the role of steward and become the ultimate arbiter of truth. This was the birth of a profound psychological dissonance. The internal struggle between the comfort of obedience and the intoxicating allure of autonomy. The sequence of the fall did not begin with an external action, but with an internal erosion. A flicker of doubt regarding the integrity of the garden's design blossomed into a desire to grasp at something forbidden. When the choice was finally exercised, the world did not explode in calamity. Rather, the internal landscape shifted irrevocably. The serene clarity that had once defined the human experience was replaced by a sudden, jarring self-consciousness. Where there was once only intimacy and openness, a veil of shadows descended. The sensation of being exposed became a heavy cloak, and the awareness of vulnerability, previously unknown, took root in the spirit. This was the dawn of the human conscience, a sharp and painful awakening that forever severed the easy harmony between the observer and the observed. The psychological weight of this transition was profound. For the first time, there was a distinction between the self and the other, between the internal landscape of desire and the external laws of existence. The garden remained unchanged in its physical beauty, but to those who had crossed the threshold of awareness, it was no longer a home of seamless peace. It was now a landscape of conflict, where the pursuit of wisdom was tainted by the heavy realization of what had been surrendered. The innocence that had once acted as a lens for the world was gone, replaced by the complex, often turbulent capacity for introspection and the heavy burden of consequences. The transition from the garden to the wilderness marked the first true rupture in the human narrative. Outside the protected borders of paradise, the earth was no longer an obedient canvas. It became a resistant, untamed force that demanded toil and sweat to yield its treasures. This was the dawn of a new era, where the immediate provision of the garden was replaced by the cold, calculating necessity of survival. In this harsh new theater, the fundamental seeds of discord began to germinate. Two brothers, each a reflection of the evolving human condition, stood at the intersection of hope and resentment. The landscape of their hearts mirrored the rugged, unyielding terrain that now stretched before them. One sought to honor the ancient legacy of gratitude, while the other grappled with the growing bitterness of ambition. It was the birth of a complex socio-political dynamic. The moment when human perception of value shifted from communal existence to a competitive drive for dominance. When the tension reached its inevitable zenith, a shadow fell across the family line. It was not a physical struggle, but a profound moral eclipse, a choice that silenced the melody of brotherhood and replaced it with a heavy, enduring discord. The repercussions were immediate and irreversible. One brother was cast into the wandering unknown, a testament to the internal exile that follows the abandonment of empathy. The path forward was no longer guided by the internal compass of grace, but by the relentless pursuit of agency. Driven by the necessity of their displacement, humanity began to weave the intricate tapestry of civilization. They forged tools from the very stone that had once been their adversary, built shelters against the biting winds of the wild, and established social structures to mitigate the chaos of their new existence. Every advancement, from the taming of fire to the cultivation of the wild fields, was an act of defiance against the harsh silence of their exile. Yet, in every structure they raised and every boundary they marked, there lingered the haunting memory of the garden. The struggle against the resistant earth was also a struggle for identity. They were no longer the simple stewards of a perfect domain, but the architects of their own intricate, often turbulent history. As the sun dipped below the jagged horizon, they looked toward the vast, untamed future, carrying the heavy, dual legacy of their past. The capacity for grand invention and the persistent, shadow-cast fragility of the human heart. The transition from the garden to the wilderness marked the first true rupture in the human narrative. Outside the protected borders of paradise, the earth was no longer an obedient canvas. It became a resistant, untamed force that demanded toil and sweat to yield its treasures. This was the dawn of a new era, where the immediate provision of the garden was replaced by the cold, calculating necessity of survival. In this harsh new theater, the fundamental seeds of discord began to germinate. Two brothers, each a reflection of the evolving human condition, stood at the intersection of hope and resentment. The landscape of their hearts mirrored the rugged, unyielding terrain that now stretched before them. One sought to honor the ancient legacy of gratitude, while the other grappled with the growing bitterness of ambition. It was the birth of a complex socio-political dynamic. The moment when human perception of value shifted from communal existence to a competitive drive for dominance. When the tension reached its inevitable zenith, a shadow fell across the family line. It was not a physical struggle, but a profound moral eclipse, a choice that silenced the melody of brotherhood and replaced it with a heavy, enduring discord. The repercussions were immediate and irreversible. One brother was cast into the wandering unknown, a testament to the internal exile that follows the abandonment of empathy. The path forward was no longer guided by the internal compass of grace, but by the relentless pursuit of agency. Driven by the necessity of their displacement, humanity began to weave the intricate tapestry of civilization. They forged tools from the very stone that had once been their adversary, built shelters against the biting winds of the wild, and established social structures to mitigate the chaos of their new existence. Every advancement, from the taming of fire to the cultivation of the wild fields, was an act of defiance against the harsh silence of their exile. Yet, in every structure they raised and every boundary they marked, there lingered the haunting memory of the garden. The struggle against the resistant earth was also a struggle for identity. They were no longer the simple stewards of a perfect domain, but the architects of their own intricate, often turbulent history. As the sun dipped below the jagged horizon, they looked toward the vast, untamed future, carrying the heavy, dual legacy of their past, the capacity for grand invention, and the persistent, shadow-cast fragility of the human heart. The chronicle of these early days reveals a profound paradox. We are at once the architects of our own intricate legacy and the weary pilgrims of a lost paradise. We began as stewards in a garden of perfect resonance, only to find ourselves navigating the labyrinthine corridors of human ambition, pride, and the heavy weight of our own agency. The blueprint, once traced in the light of absolute clarity, now bears the complex, weathered markings of history itself. As we look back upon these foundational chapters, the realization emerges that the journey from the garden was never a singular moment in time, but a continuous unfolding of the human spirit. The dissonance that fractured the initial harmony, the struggle for survival, the rising tides of competition, and the eventual dilution of our shared moral compass, was the crucible in which our resilience was forged. We traded the ease of the eternal for the significance of the temporal. The story of the architect and the early generations is not merely an ancient account. It is a mirror. It reflects the inherent tension between the desire for freedom and the need for order, between the pride of creation and the grief of corruption. Every struggle we face today, every attempt to build a civilization out of the dust, and every quiet longing for a return to a place of unburdened peace is an echo of those first steps taken outside the gates. Though the original design may have been eclipsed by the shadows of our own choices, the narrative does not end in silence. It evolves. The very capacity for introspection that led to our exile is the same tool we now use to seek meaning within the chaos. We are the inheritors of both the loss and the potential. The grand experiment continues, and the ledger of history is still being written, page by page, by the choices we make when the horizon darkens and the path ahead seems obscured by the mist of time. Perhaps the true purpose of the garden was never to hold us in a static state of innocence, but to serve as the baseline against which we measure our growth. As we move forward, we carry the memory of the light, the weight of the shadow, and the enduring, relentless spark of the human spirit, forever building, forever searching and forever reaching toward a symmetry we know exists, even if it remains just beyond our grasp.